All right, Jay.
One more question, please.
Yes.
The question is customer retention. How do we retain them?
How do you retain them?
Yeah, customer retention.
So customer retention, there are a lot of great companies that are focused on customer retention specifically. So like Gainsight and Tango and Blue Nose. And a lot of them are starting to do some really good predictive stuff as well. Second.
Specialty.
It would be awesome if Salesforce had like have customer retention.
Track their behavior.
And what happened to them? We want them back. Awesome. Thank you. My name is Steven.
Thanks,
That was great.
Thank you.
Show them that they are
I like your
appreciated.
Walmart.
It was, I mean, but he was like you said, like I said, by the end of their life, they're going to spend at least $300,000. And even though all they don't have health care, they don't get right, but they still have to smile at everybody because I'm talking smile. They're going to spend a lot of money.
I think any industry, that's good advice.
Smile and dial.
Smile and dial. They can see your smile even through the phone.
Gotta raise your energy above 500.
Anyway, that's great. Can I really quickly tell you what I got out of this?
Cool. Well, for our second demo, we have Jay Jennison from Full Circle CRM. Take it away, Jay.
Thank you, guys.
I like it.
Thanks to Infer for sponsoring. Thank you to Rackspace as well for hosting. These are always great meetups. Jamie, apologize for sneaking in the beginning of your demo. Was hustling across town.
No problem.
What we got here? Oh, great. Of course. So I was really excited while we kind of get PowerPoint back loaded up. I was excited to speak at this event tonight because not only as you'll see what we have for you with Full Circle as an analytics and reporting application, but also because of this need for better reporting in Salesforce. It's kind of a trending piece right now. We're seeing companies that are being required to have better analytics and better visibility in Salesforce because their companies really want to use Salesforce as that kind of overarching system of record, that one source of truth that they can then do all of their reporting from. And so, there we go. So hopefully this works this time. Great. So, as David mentioned, my name is Jay Jennison. I work for Full Circle, and I manage new business and partnership development for them. And so, what Full Circle really is a native Salesforce application that really extends the existing reporting functionality within Salesforce to provide better visibility, better accuracy into all of your marketing data. And so, as a bit of context before we get over into the demo org and I show you some of the different features and some of the reports that we can pull, wanted to provide just a bit of exposition. What led to the genesis of our company about 2.5 years ago was the recognition kind of that companies are spending a lot of money on marketing technology right now, not only in Salesforce and a CRM, but also presumably some sort of marketing automation product as well. And despite this kind of substantial investment, we're still seeing companies that struggle to really access the data they require to make confident decisions and then really kind of optimize their marketing practice based off of that. More often than not, the companies that I engage with have some sort of existing data set in place, but they also recognize that it's some sort of it's inaccurate, it's a bit limited, and therefore they're really not leveraging the data to the best of their ability. And so we wanted to kind of really investigate where does this distrust in the data currently lie? What's really creating this distrust? And so we found it to really be rooted in some data disconnects. I used to work for Salesforce, and so if there are any Salesforce people in the room, you might recognize the crack slide. It's a pretty common one up there. But this slide right here is a really great overview as to the specific gaps, the specific limitations that our application addresses in Salesforce, to provide all that better reporting functionality, the better visibility, the accuracy, and finally the granularity. And so I want to quickly run through these just so we're on the same page, but before that, I'd like to poll the audience. How many of you guys, as a part of your job, are tasked with doing some sort of reporting inside of Salesforce? Okay, decent amount. How many marketers out there do we have? Decent amount, okay. So I'm just going to seek to keep this high level, but I definitely want to run through this real quick. So when we think about the marketing automation side of the equation, all the big vendors down to the small guys, they do a great job at that high level reporting. Of a specific program we ran, how many emails did we send out? Of those emails, how many clicks, opens, bounces did we get? That's all pretty easy. Now, where marketing automation across the board struggles is when we create a new lead and we push it from the marketing automation side into Salesforce. Once in Salesforce, it's actually pretty difficult to track what has happened after the fact. If we convert it into an opportunity and then close that opportunity, or instead, have we maybe disqualified that new lead? And if so, why? So the first thing Full Circle is really seeking to do here is to bridge the gap between marketing automation and Salesforce to provide that better continuity, that better visibility as we generate leads from the marketing automation side, as well as all the other different channels we're utilizing. We push them into Salesforce, and then we track them through our successive stages of our funnel inside Salesforce. Now, on the Salesforce side of the equation, this is really where kind of the bulk of the gaps, the limitations that our application addresses lie. So the first of those major gaps that we address is the lead and contact divide. I'm sure, if anybody, if you've used Salesforce, you've probably run into this challenge. There's no natural mechanism to report across leads and contacts in a holistic manner. Now, if we think about what a campaign response really is, inherently we understand a campaign response can represent not only a net new lead, but it can also come from an existing contact in our database. And therefore, it's really important to be able to report holistically across both leads and contacts so we can ensure that we have the most complete and inclusive data set that we do all of our campaign reporting from. So this is really kind of the backbone of the application. The second major gap that we're addressing here is with regards to historical response tracking. What I mean by this simply is just the ability to look back at a campaign I ran in the past and understand what happened to that campaign, what was the outcome, how many new opportunities did I create, how many of those closed, and then on the other side of the coin, how many of the new leads created did we disqualify and why. Right now, actually all of that information is being overwritten. And so this creates some significant challenges when it comes to doing any kind of trending reporting, kind of looking week to week, month to month, year to year, or just effectively benchmarking, your current efforts versus those past fiscal quarters or fiscal years. So that's the second major thing we solve for. The third piece is with regards to funnel visibility. Right now, within standard out-of-the-box Salesforce, there's actually kind of a gap in visibility in the higher stage in the funnel. That's specifically between when the lead is created and when the opportunity is converted. Now, if we think about kind of that stage of the funnel, we also understand that some of the most important marketing activity is happening there prior to opportunity creation. And therefore, it's really important to have some visibility into that marketing activity so we can understand, what's driving opportunity creation for our organization. So by filling in that gap, we're now able to offer actually true end-to-end visibility, all the way from when the lead is pushed over into Salesforce to when the opportunity closes in a one deal at the end of the day. And with that, that's going to enable us to finally do things like reporting on core funnel metrics, volume, velocity, conversion rates, all of which are otherwise very difficult and more or less impossible to do in standard Salesforce. There's always gaps there. And so, the alternative is just a lot of manual effort in Excel, which nobody likes. And then the last piece here that we address is with regards to campaign attribution. Right now, standard Salesforce seeks to try and credit a single campaign on the opportunity, give it all the credit. It also doesn't validate whether or not the person actually responded to that campaign. So in many cases, the campaign getting credit could be maybe an email campaign that bounced off the recipient, something they never saw or responded to. Nonetheless, it's still going to get the credit. And so you begin to realize how this sort of attribution methodology can create some pretty significant inaccuracies when we go to do campaign reporting on the back end. Now, the extension of that, what everybody's really talking about now, is multi-touch attribution. How do we account for every single campaign on the opportunity, not just maybe that primary campaign? And so what we have is we also have a multi-touch attribution offering, which we refer to as weighted campaign influence. That's going to allow us to look at every single campaign on the opportunity, understand the unique influence of each of those campaigns on the overall deal. And then when we look at that in aggregate, it's going to show us which campaigns have influenced more of our closed revenue versus which campaigns have really influenced maybe not so much of our revenue. And that's really what we're trying to get to, because we want to be able to understand which campaigns drive revenue and reinvest in those campaigns, reallocate budget there, and obviously pull money out of those campaigns that really aren't productive for us. So I know that was a bit dense, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. This is really what we're focused on addressing in order to provide that great reporting functionality on the back end. To just offer a quick product stack slide, just to kind of reiterate where we fit into the marketplace. We are a native Salesforce application, so as you'll see in a moment when we get over into the demo org, we're built right within our customer's live production org of Salesforce. And so we kind of exist as an additional layer to extend that reporting capability. That said, we've got great functionality in terms of the different marketing automation vendors we work with. Marketo, interestingly, represents about 50% of our client base. And so we've got a lot of expertise there, but we also have plenty of Eloquent and Pardot customers, as well as some of those using, more kind of boutique vendors like Acton, Wrapup, stuff like that. And then lastly, really the intention with all of this is to bulletproof your marketing data with inside Salesforce. We wanted to provide a way for organizations to really leverage Salesforce as that one source of truth, that system of record. So they can really understand, like I said, which campaigns are driving revenue and reallocate budget into the appropriate places. Ultimately, the way we do this is we're trying to drive trust in the data. That's really what it's all about at the end of the day, because if you don't trust the reports you have, you're not going to leverage them to really enact any kind of confident business decision making. And so the way we're driving trust in this data is, firstly, the data remains in Salesforce at all time because we are a native Salesforce application. We're ensuring the integrity of the data is maintained, but also you're able to use all that standard Salesforce functionality in pulling, generating, and running these reports. Keep in mind, the big difference here is the reports we deliver are just a lot more robust in their functionality, their accuracy, and the granularity of the data. Secondly, we're ensuring that marketing and sales finally have alignment between their numbers. In the past, we typically see marketing in Excel or a marketing automation product, and because sales reports from Salesforce, marketing from one of those other disparate kind of locations, they have separate data sets. And so the numbers that they kind of deliver never match up, never align, and then we're kind of left with wondering which set of data is accurate. And so we've brought everyone back into Salesforce, and now the numbers between marketing and sales finally line up with one another, and that really just improves alignment between the two departments as a whole, because now there's clear ownership, clear accountability as to who's responsible for what sort of activity. And then lastly, the big kind of value add in the trust in the data is with we're really delivering unparalleled granularity in the data that we provide. We can take you all the way down to the individual campaign response. And that's really powerful for marketers and salespeople alike, because finally, if they see a kind of anomaly or a weird looking number, they can dig into the underlying data and really understand and validate how they arrived at that number, ensure that it's accurate, but also from a C-level standpoint, when that CMO looks at the reports, they'll have a lot of confidence as well, because people can explain to them, in fact, how they've arrived at a specific number, and therefore they're going to trust that data. So at this point, I want to move over to our demo org. This is a quick logo slide. As you can see, some of the customers we work with. Infer and us have a common client in Box. I'll actually explain to you how Box uses Infer's product kind of in conjunction with ours. We have Serious Decisions as a customer as well. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Serious Decisions. They're a marketing leader, kind of a best practices leader out there, and so we're helping them measure and operationalize their own funnel. And so with that, I want to hop over into the application and show you guys some of the reports and some of the features there. While I do so, are there any questions I can address right off the bat? Pretty straightforward. Okay. So the first thing that I want to look at and just kind of discuss is how we track campaign responses through the funnel, because it's quite a bit different than the way standard Salesforce thinks about it. If we scroll down to the bottom to the campaign history section right here, you'll notice that this person has responded to a variety of different campaigns. And let's see if we can make this a bit smaller and get the entire screen in view for you. Pull that back over. What you'll notice in a moment is we're actually visualizing the response score, the lead score in this case. And in Box's case, they use Infer. And so this is actually the Infer lead score that we're visualizing. Now, our application interprets that lead score to understand when the lead score threshold has been broken, and therefore when the campaign is ready for sales engagement, or excuse me, the lead is ready for sales engagement. Now, the score threshold is 100 within this demo org, and so you notice this first campaign, the Google advertisement, didn't generate a response score above the scoring threshold. Our application actually understands that, realizes that we're not ready for sales to engage yet, and therefore flips over the associated response status to resolve no action required. Because again, we know that they're not ready for sales to engage quite yet. That said, you'll notice to the far right, we are giving this campaign credit for a really important piece of information. It drove a net new name within our database, and that's going to allow us to begin to understand which campaigns are driving more net new names versus which campaigns are driving more responses from those existing names in our database. Now you'll notice the second campaign response finally broke that score threshold. And again, the system recognizes that now we're ready for sales to engage. So it's going to flip over the response status in this case to open not contacted. And now we can even kind of automate a workflow to push this lead to the appropriate salesperson for follow-up. Now, because this campaign has driven the Infer lead score above the threshold and to the marketing qualified stage as a result, as you see on the far right, this campaign now effectively becomes that active campaign response. This is where we track all of our funnel movement relative to. And the big difference here is that we do that on the campaign member. So I want to quickly hop over to the campaign member at the risk of maybe going a bit too technical, but I want to give you a look at where we track all of our funnel movement. And it's not going to let me do that, of course. Let's try that again. Okay, so we're going to skip that. So just to circle back to that, we're doing this in the campaign member. We track all of our funnel stages there. And because we're reporting on the campaign member, that's what's allowing us to report across leads and contacts. We're not trying to report on the lead side or the contact side. Instead, we report on campaign members and therefore can really bridge that divide between the lead and contact. So now that we've kind of talked through how we build the data, I want to take a look at a few of the different reports that we offer as it relates to the funnel. And so the first report that we're going to take a look at is actually a funnel-focused report. It's going to be showing us volume and conversion rates. And this is a pretty high-level report. It's by source. So we're just comparing our marketing versus our sales activity. Now, I want to start just with the marketing activity. And what we're seeing here is that marketing has generated around 2,400 total campaign responses. Now, to the right of that, what we're seeing is, in fact, our funnel. Granted that it's kind of visualized left to right as opposed to top to bottom, but this is, in fact, our marketing funnel. So on the left side here, we can see the total number of campaign responses or inquiries that were generated. And then as we move right, we can understand how many of those responses have mapped over to successive stages in the funnel all the way to a closed deal at the end of the day. Now, to the right of that, we're seeing some percentages. What these percentages represent are actually conversion rates between stages. So of the 2,400 total campaign responses generated, we can understand that 38% of those have converted from the inquiry to the marketing qualified stage, and so on. These are the reports that our customers are really getting excited about, and the reason being, not only is this stuff impossible to report on in standard Salesforce, but also it's providing really, really relevant and valuable data points. We're going to be able to deliver finally that inquiry to close conversion rate. And with that, if you know things like your average deal size, your velocity, you can accurately understand, exactly how many new leads do I need to fill the top of the funnel with to ensure that I meet that revenue goal at the end of the quarter. Companies now, especially marketing organizations, are being asked to take on a contribution to revenue. And so this really aids them in, allowing them to understand exactly what do we need to do in order to achieve that goal at the end of the day. Now, one of the great values of our application in our reporting is the ability to really pivot and slice and dice these reports and look at them in levels of increasing granularity and by different criteria. And so I want to just take a look at a few of the same reports by different dimensions. This report, again, is going to be a volume and conversion rate report, but now you'll notice we're looking at it by campaign type. Our emails versus our telemarketing versus our banner ads, webinars, events, so on, whatever we use. This is showing us our complete funnel. We can also, in this case, be inclusive of all those sales-generated campaigns as well, or those partner-generated leads. So we're giving you visibility into your entire funnel, not just something where we're looking at marketing or sales individually. Question?
Sorry.
No worries.
Question. I use Goldmine.
Mm-hmm.
Don't blame me for that. I did act. Please, again, don't blame me for that.
Uh-huh.
And then I had Don and Bradstreet,
Right.
where like we had all these leads,
Right.
and then you call, and then this dude has been dead for 5 years,
Right.
or they've been out of business for like 2 years. Or does that work into that as well? Like when you talk about that?
Well, in that case, I think you're talking about kind of the quality of your different leads.
Yeah,
We don't
fine.
really validate the quality of leads. Instead, we're tracking them through the funnel and understanding what's happened. Once the lead comes into the system, where have they gone? Have we converted them into an opportunity? Has that opportunity closed? We also don't do anything around deduplication. So
Okay,
that would be,
I must have misunderstood.
oh, it's okay. No worries. So to hop back over here, I'm going to take this report one level deeper, and we're going to look at the same thing instead by individual campaign. So again, this is the same volume, same conversion rate report by individual campaign. You have a question?
Yeah, since you do this at campaign member level, right? What you
Mhm.
just said. How do you track, because when a rep call is called as a contact person,
Mhm.
and that person has multiple campaign member, right?
Mhm.
So how do you attribute that call to specific type of campaign member?
So that's going to be a more activity-based type thing as opposed to a marketing campaign, as opposed to a marketing activity. So when a rep calls down, that's going to be logged in the activity in Salesforce, whereas what we're really looking at here is different campaigns and what's happened there. So,
Yes, but what the one thing?
What if that person is dead?
But how do you associate
Right,
that
that's
specific
so-
campaign member?
You
has
eliminate the
become
lead.
as an MPO, as
You delete the lead.
That's what I'm trying. How do you associate that specific campaign member has become an MPO or SQL? When the rep is doing the
So within the contact, we also have a contact status, just as a lead has a status. So those two mirror one another. Therefore, the rep-in interaction with the contact object is exactly the same as a lead object. They would escalate the contact status now from maybe attempting contact to working. They would then create an opportunity, and all of that is going to trigger progression through the funnel.
correct, but I can know like, but that contact can have 10 different campaign members.
Mhm.
How do you associate that?
So we're actually looking at individual campaign responses. We're not looking at the person. So, in some cases, someone's going to respond to many different campaigns. Some of those campaign responses, because we track it at the campaign member level, will move through the funnel. Others of those will be immediately disqualified. So, to your point, I think what we're talking about is the ability to double count or mitigate that. We have options on either side because there's kind of some differing logic, whether we want to double count or whether we want to look at every individual campaign response. So maybe you and I can connect after and we can kind of talk about the specific use case.
So, and if I may apologize too, because the leads that we were getting from were from Don and Bradstreet, and it wasn't from Salesforce. So
Yeah.
I'm not putting those
Okay.
on Salesforce.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused on
I
Salesforce
apologize.
for now.
Yeah, no worries. So the last thing that we're kind of trying to get to with all this funnel visibility is this campaign spend report. And I've broken this down by individual campaign. So we're just looking at a single campaign. But now, with all of this data, we're able to really bring together kind of an inclusive view of exactly what's happened to a campaign. And as we move left to right, we can see the cost of that campaign, in this case, $20,000. It's generated 134 total campaign responses. And as we move to the right, we're kind of seeing the progression through the funnel. So what number of opportunities we created, and how many of those did we actually win? Now, as we continue to move right, you're not only seeing the total pipeline generated and the opportunity amount, but we're also seeing the opportunity value won. And from that opportunity value won, we can do great things like ROI derivation. We can get to our cost per response, our cost per opportunity, and even our cost per closed deal. So this is kind of what our current customers are using as that holy grail, because it's really bringing together and giving them a full view of exactly what the performance of a specific campaign has been. You know, in some cases, we might generate a great number of new opportunities, but relative to its cost, it hasn't been that productive for us. So this really puts it in perspective relative to things like cost, as well as the output in terms of the opportunity value and closed revenue it's generating. So this has been very heavy on the funnel side of the application. The other side of the application is with regards to campaign attribution and multi-touch attribution, which we call campaign influence. And so I want to quickly hop over there just to give you a quick look. You guys bear with me for 1 second. So what we're looking at here is actually called our Deal Explorer. This is unique to Full Circle, and what it does is it helps to aggregate key data points specific to an opportunity. So as you can see at the top, we have our opportunity right here. It's worth $650,000. And then below this, we can see every single campaign that has been associated to this opportunity. Now, if we look on the left side right here, this model represents what standard Salesforce does. It seeks to attribute a single campaign and therefore give it all the credit. And therefore, it's pretty short-sighted because as you can see, we discredit all those other campaigns. What we really want to get to instead is a way to understand how every single campaign has had some unique influence. Because that's really the case. You know, all these campaigns aren't created equal. Some have been very influential. Some have been a little less influential. And so if we move to the far right side, this is really what we're trying to get to. What's happening here with these three different influence models are they're breaking down the total opportunity value of $650,000 and applying it down as a percentage of the total to each campaign so we can understand that some of these campaigns are more influential versus some of these campaigns are much less influential. Now, you'll notice that all of this is specific to a single opportunity. When we look at this in aggregate, that's really where it becomes powerful.
So are you saying that by specific contact role, they therefore get a higher percentage of the weighting, or what's the attribution model?
Yeah, so when we break down and when we configure these attribution models, it's not only based on marketing touch points, so we're going to give a little credit maybe to the primary campaign, more credit there, versus the first or the last touch campaign. We then look at contact roles, and we would assumingly maybe give more credit to the campaigns that the decision maker has responded to versus that technical influencer. We can even look at campaign types and give more weight to, you know, maybe those event-driven campaigns that we leverage versus maybe just a newsletter or something like that. So all of that comes into the configuration of the models. The three different models apply themselves down to every single opportunity in the database. So when we look at this in aggregate, we're going to get something like this. And let me see if I can consolidate this a bit. Oops. There we go. And so this is a dash that we configured for the Series Decisions Summit last year. And let's just focus on the right side of the screen. As you can see, each of the models is visualized in one of the three swim lanes. Now, if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll notice we're looking at first the most influential campaigns on closed revenue, as well as the total dollar amount of revenue they've influenced. Below that, we've also are looking at the most influential campaigns on our open pipeline. So we can really begin to also differentiate which campaigns drive more closed revenue versus which campaigns maybe drive more open pipeline opportunity creation. As we scroll back up to the top, this is where it gets kind of cool because you'll notice that we've inserted some different business dimensions. In this case, we're looking at which campaign types are most influential on total revenue. And as you can see, our email marketing in green is in fact the most influential to the tune of over $21 million. As we scroll down though, we've actually inserted some additional business dimensions. And in this case, we're looking at it across company size. So now which campaign types are most influential across the different market segments that we sell into, enterprise, mid-market, or small business. Now, we can very easily pivot on this and look at it instead by something like account region to understand which campaign types are driving more revenue in different regions we market to. We could look at it across industry or vertical to understand which campaigns are driving more revenue specific to those industries or verticals. So one of the great benefits of our reporting is the flexibility and the ability to really slice and dice these reports and look at it across business dimensions. So think about anything that you guys track within a standardized a standardized field in Salesforce. We can report by that dimension after the fact. Finally, below that, now we've kind of standardized this view. So we're looking at proportional influence. And this is really great because it provides a kind of real-life use case as to how we can pull some insight out of this. You'll notice that in the enterprise space, the banner ads in purple are actually a pretty insignificant influencer to enterprise revenue. But as we move right to the mid-market and small business, we see that the banner ads are actually a very influential campaign type to those market segments. And so this is a great example of how we can understand to best engage companies of different sizes, because we obviously know which campaign types are more compelling versus less compelling to them. And so this is a really high-level kind of a great example of some different functionality we have around multi-touch attribution. We refer to it as weighted campaign influence. But keep in mind, we can obviously look at this by a variety of different business dimensions, criteria, just depending on what you're interested in measuring, what's most compelling to your business. So at that point, I'm probably gone over a little bit. So I want to take a step back. I think I've given you a good overview as to the different functionality of the application. I'd like to open it up for questions now. If anybody has anything? Everybody got their question?
When you have that primary campaign
Mhm.
source, I think it's related to the scoring, like when it first became reach the score level.
You're exactly right. The way we define the primary campaign within our application is not by that last touch or that first touch. We instead look at the campaign that drove it above score threshold to the marketing qualified stage. So we've actually provided some increased accuracy around the way the primary campaign is designated, because we're ensuring that the primary campaign is in fact a campaign they responded to, but also it's a campaign that drove sales engagement there and really initiated the conversation. So that's a big difference, thank you for asking, between Salesforce and our kind of logic there. Any other questions?
In your
I
chart,
wanted one, but then
Go ahead, you got it.
okay, in your chart on the right there,
Mhm.
you've got the purple reflecting that the banner ads were more effective in the smaller companies. How do you incorporate the fact that the banner ads may be targeted to smaller companies as opposed to large companies? They're not, the banner ad is not necessarily aimed at all different sizes.
Right, well, this is kind of a way to back into that. We don't want to maybe say that banner ads should be targeted to different size companies or to the smaller companies, because we don't really know if that's really going to be compelling to them. So
Right, but
instead,
is there a way to say, is there a way up front to say, we've done the analysis here, and
Mhm.
it seems that banner ads are more effective with small companies, so we're actually going to specifically target our banner ads to try to attract small companies. So, you could be reflecting the fact that an initial review of your product has indicated to use banner ads with small
Mhm.
companies. Is there a way to then try to capture that influence in the creation of the campaign?
well, of course, so, with this, we'd have some insight and try and maybe better leverage these banner ads to target small businesses. But then in 3 months, at the end of the next quarter, we can validate whether or not that was actually true.
Do you have annotation tools and comment tools? For example, I'd like to keep your report and then have a discussion with the team and then be able to record all of that. Let's say clicking on one of the parts of the
Mhm.
report.
Yeah, so all of these dashboard components are supported by underlying Salesforce reports. So you still have the ease of use in creating these reports, pulling them, whenever you need them, sharing them across your team. That's really the big benefit of reporting from within inside Salesforce, as opposed to doing it in some, third-party application, a BI tool, something like that.
So you created this dashboard, but we as the client could create our own.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and we would certainly recommend that. We have about 170 pre-created reports, about 15 plus pre-created dashboards. That said, it's standard Salesforce reporting. You still have the ease of use to create this. And so when we deploy with our new customers, we really dig in to understand, what do they want to report on? What do they want to get out of the application? We configure all of this in line with that so that you guys can have the visibility that you really want. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, very much. Appreciate you all showing up. That's cool.